We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Life as a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. I have been waiting for a week now to react to this video. I was pleasantly surprised when this interview happened. I think I may have already talked about it a little bit, that I was planning on reacting to it. Uh, and that, of course, is Andrew Wilson having kind of like a debate discussion with Lauren Chen. Lauren Chen is definitely one of the most popular new age con Inc. individuals. She's definitely one of the first people that I was exposed to when I started to consume conservative media. She first started out as roaming millennial, and I am fairly familiar with her story now. Admittingly, I'll just be honest with you guys, as I always am. I don't really watch her content, and it's nothing against her per se, but I don't watch any women's content because I do truly believe that, for the most part, from a male perspective, watching any female's content is the underlying motivation is, more being enamored with their looks versus what they actually have to say. Now, and Lauren definitely is, she's a little cutie. She's a little cutie for sure. But that's just my personal take. I don't think men should listen. Number one, namely, I'm patriarchal. Therefore, I don't think women should have a place, if I can help it, where they are here and kind of bestowing information to me. But also, I do think that for most men, watching women's content is out of male attraction for their looks rather than purely for what they have to say. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But I am familiar with her. She is definitely somebody, like I said, early on when I was in college, that I would listen to. She is, she is, and we're going to be watching. I wasn't planning on this. We're going to be watching PF Jung's reaction to this. I saw this on Andrew's Twitter. We're going to be listening to his reaction. And I want to say, I'm going into it with an open mind. I think it's important to have an open mind. I know a lot of Christians who are uh, very close-minded, and I'm not saying you should not be confident in your beliefs, but you shouldn't be so closed off to where you can't take on any differing viewpoints or differing information. And I definitely know quite a bit of people like that, and to me, it's quite off-putting. So suffice it to say, Lauren is what he calls a cultural Christian, meaning, or a cultural Christian conservative, meaning essentially that she is Christian, but her being Christian does not dictate her entire worldview when it comes to politics and her being a conservative. Whereas Andrew is a Christian nationalist, and it does bleed into his entire worldview. It's the foundation and the building block for what he is. Now, as I will say when we react to PF Jung's video, I think he's incorrect. And I think ultimately, and really, he missed and I've only watched thus far a little bit of PF Jung's video, but this is what he missed entirely of Andrew's argument, and people like myself and other paleo conservatives, is that ultimately people like Lauren really have no clue what they are. And they don't even know that they're not a paleoconservative, or if they are even a cultural Christian conservative. That's the whole point. And literally the entire basis for what Andrew has to say for pretty much the entirety of his debate discussion with Lauren is that they aren't aware, and it causes some inconsistencies. It really, really does. So we're going to delve into that, because really what happens is you get, and this is why they get called out so much, you get a lot of, especially on the women's side of things, where they say that they are conservative and they're Christian, but then you see them supporting it, when there are examples that come out where their logic is challenged and taken to its final point and totally fleshed out, you do end up seeing inconsistencies. We definitely see that when it comes to their stances on feminism. As we saw, and I reacted to it with Millie Weaver, we see that they aren't feminist only up until the point to where it no longer benefits them. So they aren't feminists only up until the point that they can stomach, but they're ultimately not patriarchal either. So, they want men to lead, but only so much. They want men to lead, but only in a way that is palatable to them. So that's really at the heart of all this. So without further ado, let's dive into this. By the way, if you're not subscribed, be sure to smash that subscribe button, like, comment, share. I dropped some car ride rants from an inspiration that I had from the show Dexter. And I didn't realize it until now, or like right before starting to record this video. But today's Mother's Day in America. And I, really, I just started to watch Dexter again, and I was inspired by his single mom situation. If you've never seen the show, in the first couple seasons, he's with this woman named Rita, and they have a relationship, and she has two kids from another man. And so I dropped a few videos regarding my stance on that. And I totally had no idea that I didn't put two and two together that today was Mother's Day. And I happened to drop that about single mothers. What spurred that thought is a post that Jay Dyer has about today being Single Mother's Day. All right, guys, here we go.
Commentators who absolutely do not agree with this. Your assaults against Pearl Davis, which led to our beef to begin with, my critiques of your video as you went after Pearl Davis, was a way for you.
Yeah, we got some beef. We got some motherfucking beef, okay?
She is dismantling feminist ideology and is pro-patriarchy, and all you could do is criticize her for that. That is covert feminism.
She's anti-Christian. She's
not anti-Christian.
She absolutely is. If she's telling men to, not date women in the church, if she's saying that Christianity has become,
she's telling them not to date reformed prostitutes. Do you want men to date reformed prostitutes in the church, Lauren?
No, I don't. Actually.
No, and neither does Pearl.
So what people like Lauren don't realize is, and guys like myself and Andrew see, because we have a firm knowledge of the red pill space plus the Christian conservative space, is that there are a lot, and Andrew speaks on this, there are a lot of women who in a previous life are the biggest hooas that you would have ever come across in your life. And they, especially in their early years, they lived this very promiscuous lifestyle. And when it gets to a point, as they get older, a few years have gone by, they've been ran through, they've, and none of those guys stuck with them and granted them a relationship, or, hypergamy got the best of those women and they thought they could do better and better and better. They decide to go back to the church and all of a sudden decide to be good girls again. They were bad girls. Now they decide to be good girls again. And so that is what in the red pill space, and really it's all about, as Andrew will say, the red pill space is not an ought. It is rather a data set of information for you to take in and then apply how you see fit. And one of those facts is that there are a lot of women who are promiscuous in their youth. Then it gets too late down the line and they all of a sudden realize how much they want a husband, how much they want a husband, and how much they want a relationship. And they end up going back and getting into the church. And then they expect men to view them as they are now in this good girl state, as opposed to what they were in their past. Now, obviously we could delve it. That's a different topic entirely. But the whole point that Pearl says is that there is an alarming amount of women within the church who fit that frame, who fit that description. So, and again, if you are red pill, it is simply that you know that information and proceed accordingly. And Pearl is saying ultimately that you need to know and be aware that those women exist within the church and not be blinded by the fact that they are a girl that just happens to be going to church, and realize, it's definitely a possibility that they were super promiscuous in their past. And yes, I would say that Pearl ultimately would say you ought not save those women. You ought not save those women, because once a 304, always a 304. Now, is that always the case? I wouldn't say it's always the case, but it is a very high rate. And all things being equal, no, I would still prefer the girl who's always been a Christian and who has not had that promiscuous past than I would a new age, newly celibate, newly virginized woman.
Pearl, because she's smart, because she understands that what's going on inside of your Protestant churches, where everything is a personal Jesus, where you have destroyed your ecclesiastical authority, where you have destroyed the actual relationship with the church, that they will let in reformed prostitutes who just got their heads dunked a week before at heresy.com, and now suddenly they're your new trad wife.
What do you mean let into the church? I don't think someone like Nala should be in any type of leadership. I mean, aside from the fact that she is a woman, she is a porn star. So that's not something that I support. But if you actually read what Pearl has said in regards to just like the idea that Christian women who go to church are no different than secular women in regard to something like divorce, that's patently untrue.
No,
that's
it's not. It's not untrue.
Look at the divorce statistics.
Yeah, let's look at the divorce statistics and dive into it. So here's what is true. What is true is that self-identified Christians do get divorced at an even.
Fuck, Andrew is such a good debater, bro. He really is. Hats off to him. Game recognizes game, and Andrew really is a phenomenal debater. And it's a tremendous skill that he has. And fuck, this guy is definitely blowing up of late. He's been on some major shows, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I mean, the guy is definitely very talented. And what I like about Andrew is he is a really good team player. Okay. Obviously, I've said I have interviewed him. Hopefully, I will not be lazy and schedule an interview with him again in the future. But he's willing to bring people along with him. As he always says, it takes all of us. We need all of you on our team. And I definitely think that that's true.
A higher rate than secularists do. What happens is, if you look in it's a pious scale. So people who take the religion more seriously, the less likely they are.
Not trying to brown nose or anything like that. I'm just giving a fella credit where credit is due. Okay.
To get divorced. But if you're talking about covert feminists who were literally sucking 100 penises last year on film in front of everybody, now suddenly they come into the church, that's your new trad wife? No, Pearl Davis says that's bullshit. And we shouldn't follow that. And that has nothing to do with the Christian ethic, and it has nothing to do with the Christian faith. And she's absolutely right. That is a dismantling of feminism. Last thing that you want is your future leaders to be bogged down with former prostitutes. That seems like a bad idea, Lauren.
No, again, I don't disagree there. The video that I did about Nala specifically is responding to people who
You
say
kissed
that
her
she
ass,
cannot be
Lauren.
saved.
You kissed her
Sorry?
ass. You kissed Nala's ass.
Yeah, because I
You
think
kissed her ass.
if she is a new person born again, then we have absolutely no right to say that she has not been saved. Now, I also believe that the best indicator.
One thing I want to say about Lauren is I haven't seen that interview with Nala because personally I'm not really that interested in yet another newfound virginized former 304. But Lauren, as I was saying at the beginning of the video, I'm definitely familiar with her work, especially going back a few years ago. She definitely has uh you can tell she's been doing this for a while. Like when she first started out, and I'm not necessarily saying like skill wise, I'm more saying she looks like she's gone through the turmoil. She looks like she's gone through the hard stuff. When she first started, she was like this very bright, kind, soft, and she still is comparatively. She is fairly feminine, as a lot of Asian women are. But she to me at least, she seems to have a darker tint, and it's probably something that not a lot of people have seen, especially people who have consistently watched her through the years. Because usually it takes you watching something, going away, and then coming back to see the before and after. But to me, she seems a little bit more, uh, a little darker, a little edgier, not like dark in a bad way, like evil, but the tone is darker. The persona is more hardened. So, anyways.
What do you mean? Why don't you have that right? She went to
Harrison.
heresychurch.com and got her head dunked. What to you is salvation?
Her head? What are you
Where's Heresy Church at? Fuck, where's that at?
talking about?
Meaning that she walked into a church, the particular one that she went to is a church which is known to take in basically any type of celebrity that they can, and especially the more horrible ones. They instantly give them a baptism and then say, oh, you're cured and you found Jesus, and then they go on a testimonial tour. Why should we take that as being authentic? If you shall know them by their fruits, that means you shall know them by their works. And in this particular case, where is Nala giving compensation back to the hundreds and thousands of men who she did horrific damage to? Where's your demand for that, Lauren?
I don't have a problem with that. The video that I did, though, was discussing whether Nala's salvation is real. And I think ultimately I did say that we shall know them by their works. This is something that we will have to wait and see. I don't disagree as a concept that Nala is, my point, though, with Nala is that it is possible for her to be saved. There's no one who is beyond the redemption of Christ.
I didn't say that there was.
Change the fact that, sorry?
I didn't say that there was, but let me ask you a question.
Well, there you go.
Assuming for a second,
can I clarify my position first?
clarify
Because
it.
you're saying a lot of things that I don't agree with. So I think you may not be sure as to what my actual beliefs are. I think a Christian man has every right to say that you were doing this yesterday. I don't want to marry you. I think there's no end to the standards that Christian men should have for other Christians. So I think a Christian man should be able to say no to dating a Christian woman if it's for something as simple as you are too much of a careerist.
Yeah, but
let alone you used to be a porn
yeah,
star.
but can is different than should. What Pearl's saying is you shouldn't do it. And I agree.
Yes,
you shouldn't do it. Not only that, let me ask you this, Lauren. Let's assume for a second
Yes,
that a person found Christ and they were convicted of doing some kid diddling. Would you let them watch your kid because they were saved?
No, absolutely. No, yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, so then what happens is inside these churches, what's going on is these women are using Christianity as a cloak and a shield. Half the time they're doing pornography with a crucifix on their chest. Half the time they have quotes, biblical quotes on their butt cheeks. I've met these women time and time again through the whatever podcast and these other places. They're utilizing the church specifically as a shield and a cloak. When we get into the red pill prescriptions themselves, if we're going opposing to descriptors, red pillars are making it very clear that the church has become corrupted with feminism, and it has.
Man, could not have said it better myself. And that really is the crux of the argument right there, is that the church, and this is why, and this is Andrew's point, his overall point to somebody like Lauren Chen, who is not fully willing to acknowledge the benefits of a patriarchal system, is that the church, the modern church, especially Protestant churches, have become so feminized and indoctrinated with feminism because, and I've talked about this on my channel. You guys know I have. Me and Andrew are twinsies on this. And I do think that it's more of a Protestant problem than like a Catholic or Orthodox problem, but it exists across all Christian sectors. But mainly in Protestantism, because of sola scriptura, it allows, and when you don't have an authority, a church authority, a governance, a committee that is able to interpret scripture and put down interpretations to the masses, it leaves room for anybody to come up with a newfangled, findled interpretation of the Bible, which is what you see inside of Protestantism. You see people who, within sola scriptura and these non-denominational churches or Baptist or evangelical, and yes, are there some based ass Protestant Christians? Of course, but you do also simultaneously see people who are given the space to interpret the Bible in a way that fits their modern sensibilities, their modern worldviews. Okay, so we're gonna watch it, and that's really what this comes down to. We're gonna watch one more video. I think he had another one. So Andrew explains the disaster of big tent conservatism. Let's see which one I want to watch. And so, as I was saying, with regards to honestly, I could choose any of the clips that Andrew has. It's all golden, and I do highly
broadly,
recommend.
feminism, they say like, oh, it's just equality between men and women in the legal.
I do highly recommend that you guys watch the discussion in its entirety. But how it relates to the red pill is that the men in the red pill are there because the modern society has let them down. It has let men down in masses. And I have talked about it ad nauseum in this video. And not only has the modern society, the modern secular society let men down, but so has the Christian church. Okay. Well, just I didn't say that as well as I want. So has Christianity. And again, it's more so Protestantism because we do see a mass migration towards orthodoxy and more authoritative, traditional, patriarchal Christian sects. We're seeing men go towards those two sects of Christianity in droves because we really are seeing the end result of the Reformation and all the downsides of it. Now, I don't want to turn this video into a critique of sola scriptura or Protestantism, but overall, men in society, whether it be being let down by Christianity or the modern secular world, they are disengaging. And to expect them to, and why are they disengaging? Because, especially with the Christian church, because they see the Christian church taking on all the same bullshit and nonsense that they're trying to escape from modern secular society. And so every which way they turn, they don't see an answer. And so what they're left with is finding the answer within red pill ideology and the manosphere. And that is what Andrew is talking about, is you can't really get that upset with these men that are turning to people like Andrew Tate, turning to people with like Myron and from Fresh and Fit, and turning to the manosphere as a whole, because when they turn left and they see the secular society, they're let down. When they turn right, as they're trying to find some semblance of rationality and logic and a space that will protect them and be proud of them as men and allow them to be men within their masculine nature as is, they're let down. So they look left, they're let down. They look right, they're let down. And so what you're left with is them turning to people, these pseudo intellectuals like Andrew Tate And it's funny because that's what Lauren Chen calls her. I think she had a channel called Pseudo Intellectual. But you're left with men that are turning to those guys, that side of the ideology, because they aren't finding answers within the Christian church. And so ultimately, as Christians, we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because we are not giving them the solutions and the answers that they are yearning for. So let's keep watching this.
Sense, I think, is where it started off. But if we look at the modern feminist movement, I think there's not only the push for equality before the law for men and women, but also equity in basically every domain, whether that's political, economic, social. And also we see a concurrent push to, I guess, derail family structures, whether that be, I mean, like the extended family, nuclear family, you name it. Feminism has done a lot more than just push for like equity. And we also see it overlapping with, I guess, intersectionalism a lot. It's very rare nowadays that you see a feminist who is not also talking about things like white privilege, straight privilege, you name it. So overall, it's a leftist ideology. And yeah, I guess
to me like you're conflating wokeism with feminism. Feminism is a rejection of patriarchy. That's all it is. The entailment of egalitarianism between men and women is a rejection of patriarchy. Who's the oppressor? If you're trying to be equal with the opposite sex, who would the oppressor be? What is the entailment there? The entailment would be men, or the oppressors. So it's a movement to reject patriarchal structures. That's what feminism is.
I would say it goes, so I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I would say if we're looking at the feminist movement and my problems with it, it extends a lot beyond just that.
Yeah, but I think it's because you conflate wokeism with feminism. Feminism is simply put a rejection of patriarchal structures. That's it. The entirety of feminist ideology is to move away. So if you're thinking about things like the destruction of the nuclear family, this type of thing, the nuclear family has a head. The head is the man. If you have the extended cross-generational family, that's also a patriarchal system. The head is the man. If you're talking about the dismantling of the church is patriarchal. Christianity is a patriarchal structure. It's the rejection of patriarchy across the board. The entire movement of feminism has nothing to do with egalitarianism at all. It has to do with dismantling patriarchy. That is what the ultimate goal is.
Well, again, I think when it comes to things like egalitarianism, that is not how I would define the modern feminist movement. But I think we're kind of seeing, like, we're splitting hairs here to a certain extent.
I think that we're making a semantic distinction with no merit. The semantics matter, especially when we're talking about these types of issues. So wokeism itself can be a leftist progressive ideology. That's true. However, when you're talking about things absent a rejection of patriarchy, the right wing can be just as guilty of those things. So you can still be.
But I mean, if we look at the modern feminist, or sorry, the current push toward things like, let's just say, allowing men in women's spaces if they identify as trans, would you see that as a feminist problem or as a woke problem?
I would see that particular issue.
And I cannot wait to hear Andrew. I've already heard his answer. I already know his answer. And I did a video on this myself. I did a car ride rant where I talk about Riley Gaines. Maybe I'll link it in this video down below. But I did a car ride rant where I discuss, as a traditional man that believes in the patriarchy and in a patriarchal system, that it is it is God's system. It is the most effective system, most moral system. It is hard for me to have any urge to save or stand behind somebody like Riley Gaines, which has seen an influx of men pretending to be women into their sports, when those same women are, by and large, people who support feminism as a whole. And so at the end of the day, it's very difficult for me to stand behind them and say, yes, no, we can't have that. No, women's sports should be women's sports. It's like, no. Where were you guys when men were under attack as a whole? Because one begets another. We wouldn't be in this situation if we were in a patriarchal system in the first place. Okay. The only reason why this is allowed to happen in the first place is because the people who are now in a tiffy about men pretending to be women and vice versa, being in, well, particularly men pretending to be women, participating in women's sports. The only reason why that is an issue in the first place is because you allowed for feminism to take root. Now, I know, obviously feminism started a long time ago, but you still allow it to this day to be what it is. Okay. And this is only a natural consequence of feminism in the first place. When feminism, one of the drawbacks and downsides that we have seen of feminism is men being uh, angry for being men and feeling ashamed at their masculinity. And so, what do? They do the saddest thing that you could ever think of, which is literally amputate themselves, or some of them, not all of them, but some of them literally amputate themselves and pretend to be a woman because they know deep down in this current system that it is far more advantageous to be a woman than it ever would be to be a man. And so that is why, in the first place, you even see them doing what they do. And then, just in general, feminism, as Andrew says, is a breakdown, a dismantling of gender specific roles. And so, once those barriers are broken down, who's to say that a man pretending to be a woman, there's really no distinction? What's the distinction? What if gender is dismantled as a whole, who's to say that they can't compete in what you call women's sports? Because realistically, in this modern society, there is no difference between men and women. They're interchangeable widgets, as Andrew would say. So nah.
Is a feminist issue. The problem
But
is,
how is that a rejection of patriarchy
because,
if we're talking
well, I'll
about the
explain it to you.
recognition?
So what happens here is that women have gone ahead and voted to allow these things to push through. The reason that this is a movement against patriarchal structures is because men and their sports are really the only sports that matter. Nobody watches women's sports at all. They just don't even bother with it, and I don't blame them for not bothering with it. It's boring as hell. Women have decided to use the power of the vote to institute these policies, and I say let them suffer by those policies that they have instituted. I have no problem with these policies, and I say let them suffer by those policies. They just don't even bother with it, and I don't blame them for these things to push through. The reason that this is a movement against...
I didn't even know Andrew felt this way per se, but I gotta say, as I said, I made a video very similar to what he's talking about right now, and I gotta tell you, I agree.
Patriarchal structures, because men and their sports are really the only sports that matter. Nobody watches women's sports at all. They just don't even bother with it, and I don't blame them for not bothering with it. It's boring as hell. Women have decided to use the power of the vote to institute these policies, and I say let them suffer by those policies that they have instituted. I have no problem with men going in to these women's spaces, for instance, and beating the shit out of all their records and completely dismantling them. What the hell do I care about women's sports for? They voted for this shit. They can deal with it.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but if we look at the
fucking heat, Andrew, let's go, bruh. Let's go.
The belief that, for example, gender is not something based on sex or chromosomes, but that it is a social construct and therefore open to self-identification, I think it goes a little bit deeper than just the rejection of
gender
male.
Is a social construction. It does not exist inside of objective reality. It's a made-up term utilized by woke leftist scumbags. It has nothing to do with objective reality. All that exists is biological sex. The norms which come with biological sex are intrinsic to the ontology of human beings.
All right. So do you view again, you can call it woke or feminist, do you view the belief that we see basically in all matters of the world, whether that's like sports, we also see it, I mean, even in terms like medicine, it's being conflated. Do you think that is something that feminists have pushed for, the conflation of biological sex with gender? Do you think that feminism at its core...
Yes, because it assists with trying to destroy the ontology of what is man. So it's an attempt to rip a fabric in the whole of truth of what is man. So yes, it is a pushed feminist. That's why you see the infighting in the feminist crowd from those who try to move over into a more conservative camp, like Rowling or J.K. Rowling, for instance, who says, no, we fought for women's liberation. This was not what that was supposed to be. But an entailment of the dismantling of patriarchy is that men can no longer protect you from yourself. And that is why patriarchy is so important, is we also protect women not just from external forces, but protect them from their own choices. And in this particular...
Holy shit, man. Well said, Andrew. Well said.
Case, feminism
You guys said you didn't need us. You said you didn't need no man. And that's also another thing that I said. All these women out here saying they don't need no man. Well, you know what? Fuck you then. No, I'm kidding. No, it's like, well, shit. You say you don't need us, then so be it. So
The dismantling of patriarchal systems, blurring the line between what is a man and a woman, has long been a feminist doctrine.
Damn, bro. Fucking fire by Andrew. Sorry, I shouldn't be cursing so much, but damn. All right, I think we're going to watch one more clip here. Let me go ahead and all right, we're going to watch a little bit more of this, and then I'll react to the PF Jung video.
This, and yes, it's true, many of them are degenerates, but that doesn't make them less right about what's going on in the fact that the Christ pillars offer no prescriptions to marriage at all. They offer nothing.
I don't think that's fair to say they offer no prescriptions for marriage at all.
Well then, okay, Lauren, why should a secularist man get married? Give me one good reason.
Well, I think that having children is a very good and very important one.
Why should a secular man want children? Why would you want a secular man to have children?
Well, because I mean, aside from the general decline in birth rates, which I think is
you want secularists to continue to reproduce? That seems like a good idea to you?
Yes, I think even if you are not Christian, you probably should have kids. We're at a point.
Is their marriage valid if it's a secularist marriage to begin with, Lauren?
Valid? No.
No. So then you're basically telling them to sin, right, Lauren? Aren't you telling them to sin by telling them to get a non-Christian marriage and have children? Aren't you telling them to sin, Lauren?
Okay, this is, yeah.
How dare you, Lauren, tell them to sin? You should be saying, sin no more, sin no more.
What's that? Yes? Yes, you're telling so you're telling people to sin, Lauren? That's your prescription?
Today,
the whole time you've been beating the holy hell out of the red pillars, and the entire time they've been right, and you've been telling them to sin, Lauren?
So hang on, let's
answer the question, Lauren.
I'm happy to admit where I'm wrong. This is not a problem for me. Let's talk about this. So, do you believe that it is sinful for a man to get married and have kids if he is not a Christian?
That's not marriage. Marriage is a sacrament between a man and a woman. That's within the purview of the Christian ethic. You have been running around with the rest of the tradcons telling men to sin, Lauren. Why are you doing that? Why? Now answer my question. Why are you doing that, Lauren?
Well, I think you're illustrating something, and again, you're getting upset with me here. But I'm happy to hear if I'm wrong, and we can talk about this.
You're telling them to sin, Lauren.
I mean, that is a.
How dare you?
It is true, and I have argued for like a civil marriage, even within, if you're going to have kids as a man, even if you're not religious, cohabitation does not have the same outcomes as a civil marriage. That is true. There's still a difference between.
And it's all sinful, right, Lauren?
Yes, I think
then
that.
Why are you advocating that people sin? Answer my question.
I guess I would. That's true. That's true. I guess my argument should be first for people to.
And now you know why I think you're a feminist, Lauren. Now you know.
Because of the marriage thing?
Because you go out of your way. You haven't thought these positions. The problem is when you lift these positions from people and you haven't actually thought about them, you end up being.
Andrew's kind of doing his low-key Chris Hansen there. Now you know, Lauren. Now you know why. Lauren, why are you telling them to sin no more? Talk to me, Lauren. Why must you ask them to sin? Why are you telling them to sin? Huh? Take a seat. Take a seat. Now you know why. Now you know why I think you're a feminist, Lauren.
At the mercy of them. The reason I engage so much with these red pillars, the reason I engage so much with them, so that I actually understand their positions. The reason that I engage so much with the Christian sphere is so that I can really understand the positions. You don't have a good understanding or grasp on these positions, and it's covert feminism. What ends up happening, ultimately, because you haven't thought these through, is you end up advocating for things like this, which are literally sinful, and you don't even know you're advocating for them.
No, I think you're right on and I will cede that. But I think when it comes to like the voting thing, I don't think it's fair to say that I haven't considered it. I think this is a good illustration of you're right here when it comes to advocating for secular marriage. I think I can simultaneously acknowledge that a secular marriage still has better outcomes for those involved and any children involved than something like cohabitation.
Oh, you're a Christian. You're not a consequentialist. You're not looking for outcomes. You're not looking for outcomes.
Let me finish. But then also recognize that by my own standard, that is not a marriage and is therefore sinful.
So that would be a contradiction, a performative contradiction.
I don't think it would be performative. I think it would be but it's not just for performance though. If you're actually like
yes, it is for performance. The performance of X action leads to contradictions. A performative contradiction in your worldview. Literally.
It is a contradiction of my worldview, but I wouldn't say it's performative. I'm not doing it for an audience.
Okay, fine. We won't make the semantic too detailed, but it's a contradiction. Fine, as long as you can see that it's contradictory inside of your worldview. But let's go even deeper. Let's go even deeper into it.
All right, let's watch P.F. Jung's. Well done, Andrew. Let's check out Mr. Jung, the libertarian who has debated libertarianism multiple times, got smashed multiple times. Yeah, I made a video on libertarian. I don't, to me, libertarianism is fairly easy to rebuke. Really all you have to talk about is human nature to rebuke libertarianism. And literally their most fundamental rule is the non-aggression principle. But I seem to not be able to find anybody who can ever answer what happens when somebody does not live by the non-aggression principle. What then? Anyways.
Ideologies or meme complexes that will fundamentally define the political landscape of the West over the next few decades.
Jung's got the he's got the creep stash going on. He's got the creep stash going on. Let's go. No, I don't know if it's a creep stash, but the mustache, not bad, not bad. I mean, I guess if you can do it, why not?
It already has a foothold in Congress. It has mainstream appeal now that it's being embraced by people.
Yeah, the first person that she just showed, she's an imposter. There are imposters within Christian nationalism, just like anything else as well.
Like Tucker Carlson, and as we'll go over today, it is
Tucker Carlson. Also, I would not consider a Christian nationalist. Okay. But I also would not fully call him a neocon either. He's kind of somebody that is working
rapidly gaining influence in the extremely important mimetic battlefield.
Now, Nick Fuentes, yes, he's definitely a Christian nationalist.
That make up the online political discourse.
Where was Lauren saying, hey, Destiny, letting other dudes...
Oh.
all over your chick's face? That's degenerate and disgusting. Why are you letting your wife go out and get by everything on planet Earth, you gross coomer gremlin? Where's Lauren Chen at the front line saying, you disgusting heathen?
Despite Andrew Wilson's less than diplomatic approach, he does provide us insight into the most important advantage that Christian nationalism has over other ideologies. And whether you support or detest Christian nationalism,
less than diplomatic approach,
you need to be aware of its fundamental philosophical dynamics. Lauren Chen has what I call a culturally Christian ethical worldview. And as an enlightened centrist, it's one that I and many, many others share.
Depends what you mean by religion. Like I am a practicing Christian. When I hear the term religion, I often think of something like dogma. To me, religion should be more about a personal relationship with Christ. Right, I'm pro-separation of church and state, but as individuals, we absolutely need that connection, which I wouldn't even call religious so much as spiritual.
But here is the fatal flaw embedded in cultural Christianity. Anyone who appeals to Christian ethics, which is arguably the framework in which all Western morality is embedded in, is immediately put at risk of being outflanked and dominated by Christian fundamentalists who correctly point to the danger of superficial interpretations of the Bible.
What I've said there is that the church should absolutely be pushing to enforce those moral standards, preaching those moral standards.
Which church?
Christian churches, like the church is the body of Christ.
Yeah, but the problem is that within Protestantism, you have so many different denominations, so many of them which embrace feminism, LGBTQ, this type of thing. They have no unified message. Only the traditional churches, Orthodox and Catholicism, do.
Andrew is so correct in identifying this flaw in Protestantism that even Jordan Peterson agrees with him.
So one of Jung's critiques of Protestantism was that the critique of Catholicism is that it might fall prey to the authoritarianism that's in some sense implicit in the Roman-like structure of the church and the hierarchy that's there. But his critique of Protestantism, the danger there was that everyone would become their own church, and then their identity would become self-proclaimed in some fundamental sense, because with no mediating structures between the divine and the person.
And what that is a critique of sola scriptura, which if you want to hear more about that, I would definitely, Andrew's good with that. Jay Dyer has tremendous critiques of sola scriptura. Suffice it to say, it was enough for me to change from being a Protestant to an Orthodox Christian, because it's an inescapable fact that you essentially can become your own pope by being a Protestant.
It's easy for the person in some sense.
And everybody within Protestantism is essentially their own pope and rely on their own understanding for the interpretation. Now, there will be some Protestants who say, well, no, I listen to this person, I listen to this person, and but essentially what you're doing is you're creating your own council. You're creating your own council, which already has existed. there's already been ecumenical councils that have existed. So, whether you solely rely upon your interpretation or you use, because there's a lot of very popular, and I know this because, like I said, I grew up within a Protestant household, very like John MacArthur. MacArthur's somebody that a lot of Protestants will go to help them with their interpretation of the Bible. And so ultimately, you're creating your own council.
To usurp the position of God. And
so this is the idea of atomization. So Catholicism is all about having official interpretations of the Bible and having a hierarchy of priesthood and apostolic succession and all this different stuff having to do with an official interpretation of the Bible. Whereas Protestantism, every church, sola scriptura, the Bible itself, the text itself, read the Bible and have a personal relationship with it. And so Protestantism escapes the rigidity of that hierarchy, but then it opens it up to atomization. Everyone can interpret their own Bible their own way, and then you have churches going extremely in weird ways and all that stuff.
It is inherent.
Well done. P.F. Jung, I'm slightly surprised that you were aware of these distinctions, but I guess it's fairly accessible. But I'm proud of you for documenting that distinction.
To Protestantism, because without a firm ecclesiastical control and church tradition, you end up with doctrines which are all over the board, because you can just say, it's my own personal Jesus, like what you said on Jesse Lee Peterson's, my own personal Jesus. So if that's the case, and it's just your own personal Jesus, then you can come up with whatever dogma you want.
I believe in the non-binary God, whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads.
Andrew and many Christian nationalists believe that without a centralized church authority, there's no real way to say that this interpretation of Christianity is wrong. And at first it seems like a good point. If I reject the church authority of Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy and defer to my personal interpretation of the Bible, who am I to say that someone else's interpretation is incorrect?
Well, let me ask you a question then, Lauren. If you're filled with the Holy Spirit and you're in church and another person's filled with the Holy Spirit and you have a different interpretation of the biblical text, how do I, the observer, determine who's right?
I think the Bible is the ultimate authority of what the Bible says. And beyond that, we do our best to interpret what the Bible says and manifest.
So how do we make the determination who's right? You say the Bible is the ultimate authority. That's great. If we're all appealing to the Bible and we all have a different concept of what these different scriptures mean, and we have a different idea of what these scriptures mean, how do we determine what's true?
This critique of interpretation that Christian nationalists like Andrew levy against non-fundamentalist Christians is incredibly powerful. And it touches on what is perhaps the most philosophically significant issue of the 21st century.
so we'll start with what I think is the most most powerful central claim of postmodernism. A claim which I think is actually correct and which also has bedeviled many other fields, including, surprisingly enough, artificial intelligence. The claim is something like, there is an infinite number of ways to interpret any even finite set of phenomena.
And so this is one of the complex problems that actually led to the rise of postmodern interpretations of literature, which is that if you take a complex narrative, there's a very large number of ways of interpreting it, and it isn't self-evident which of those are canonically correct.
Now, you see, the thing that's interesting about that claim is that you can use it to mount an assault on any interpretation of anything whatsoever, because there is a tremendous variability in the number of interpretations that you could bring to bear on a situation. Then you can instantly jump to the conclusion or expound the proposition that none of those interpretations should be privileged above any others.
How do I know which interpretation is true absent appealing to myself as the authority?
I think we need to appeal to the Bible as the authority, whichever interpretation.
Yeah, but you're the observer. You're the observer. So if you're appealing to the Bible and exegeting the text, you are the person at that point who is telling people what Scripture says. The observer himself who is observing this argument, how do they make the determination what is true? Your answer is, well, you should go to the Bible as well. Doesn't this make each individual the ultimate authority on what the Bible says?
This is why fundamentalism always has an edge over more sophisticated theology, because the sophisticated theology is inspired by a more and more modern recognition that, well, we can't read it literally because it either makes no sense or it makes barbaric sense, right? So we have to get away from the literal. And the more you get away from the literal, the more you are unconstrained by the text, and you can just broadcast on it anything you want to put there.
The Christian nationalists are always going to have an advantage over the, quote, more sophisticated theologies, like cultural Christianity, because it's the biblical fundamentalists who stay true to the original text. At least, that's what they'd like you to believe. By all appearances, Andrew seems to eviscerate Lauren Chen and her weak and superficial cultural Christian worldview. But that's not because Andrew and the Christian nationalists are correct. It's because Lauren Chen has the same problem that most people do nowadays, which is that they haven't watched enough Jordan Peterson. If they did, they would know that the fatal flaw in the fundamentalist worldview is the exact same critique of interpretation that the fundamentalists claim is inherent to the cultural Christian worldview. In other words, as an outside observer, How do I know which church authority's interpretation of the Bible is correct? The most obvious manifestation of this inherent problem is how, as Andrew points out, the Eastern Orthodox Church regards the entire Catholic Church as heretical.
The Eastern Orthodox recognize that the Catholic Church are schismatic. In fact, the Catholic Church will allow us to go in and take their sacraments, but they are not allowed to come into our churches and take our sacraments because they are schismatic, because they have a broken tradition when they yielded to papal authority, which is exactly what happened during the schism. So no, I would tend to agree with you that Catholics are schismatic, and all of you are schismatics as far.
So that is a fair point, but I think most Orthodox would say that, and this is the fundamental point that Jung is missing, is existing within a patriarchal system. That is the foundation. Now, whatever church needs to be followed in order to do that, but I think there's kind of a belief that Orthodoxy and Catholicism could kind of coexist because they both adhere to this fundamental patriarchal system. Now, obviously, and this is something that I've thought about as well, and I think is a fair critique from P.F. Jung. Obviously, I think it would be better as an Orthodox Christian myself if it was an Orthodox Christian nation or system. But anyways, let's continue to see what he has to say. I wish. I don't know if Andrew has a response to this. I'd be very curious to see.
As far as we're concerned.
And you just got to hand it to Andrew for this brilliant rhetorical evasion right here.
But absent getting into a deep theological debate, back to the discussion at hand when we're discussing the red pill.
In other words, absent getting into the deep theological part of the debate that reveals that I have the exact same flaw in my worldview that I'm beating you over the head with to critique your worldview, let's get back to the discussion about the red pill. In any case, the most important takeaway here, and the most important defense against the more fundamentalist strains of Christian nationalism, is summarized well in the following clip.
That's really not the claim that religious fundamentalists make. The claim they make is worse than that, because they claim that the Quran, say, or the Bible for that matter, is the literal word of God. But more than that, they claim that their understanding of that word is correct, which means they conflate two things. Because you could imagine a situation where you had a book, and I'm not saying this is the case, it's an imaginative exercise, where you had a book that had all the answers, that was extraordinarily complicated. And so that when you read it, it wouldn't be obvious that you understood it, or perhaps it wouldn't be obvious that you didn't understand it either, but you're not going to be able to, you can't get an uninterpreted version of the book. And so the fundamentalist claim is far worse. It's that not only is there an absolute reality, truth, embedded in the book, but that their particular take on that absolute reality is the absolute take on that book. And so they conflate their own, they make an assumption of their own omniscience and then pass that off on God, so to speak.
So at this point, you may be asking yourself, Paul, you claim to be a cultural Christian, so that implies that you must have figured out a way to at least attempt to solve the critique of interpretation. How do you know your interpretation is correct? Excellent question, my friend. I don't evaluate the validity of a given biblical interpretation by determining how logically and propositionally coherent it is. I evaluate the validity of a biblical interpretation by determining what the practical effects are when you act out and embody that interpretation in the real world.
Although there is a very large number of potential interpretations of the world, that does not mean that there is an equally large number of viable interpretations of the world.
In other words, based pragmatism. You take your fundamentalist Christianity and its strict adherence to religious tradition, and I'll take my cultural Christianity that involves being forced to cite Jordan Peterson even though he's become an absolute shill for the Daily Wire, and we'll see whose worldview produces the best consequences when you act it out in the real world. Now, on a final note, Andrew and I have talked before, and to be honest, the conversations and debates that him and I have had have genuinely been some of the more compelling conversations that have required me to think a lot. A lot of people hate Andrew because he's an abrasive and intolerable asshole, and that's of course true. But one thing that I've learned in my 27 years in life is that there's certain people who only respect and respond.
Fuck, dude, you're 27? I thought you were like 35. Oh, fuck. No, but no, I'm teasing, but still funny. Man, could this have frozen on a worse still frame? No, but still, good video.
To strength. It's not most people, it's maybe 1 out of every 30 or 40 people you meet. But whether you like him or not, Andrew is doing important mimetic work, primarily by pushing back against the self-serving and degenerate ideology of the red pill right. And it's precisely because of his less than loving communication style that allows him to do this.
God damn it!
You're still whining. Stop whining.
That is a product. I'll smack your fat ass.
So you're gonna attack.
You're
gonna
smack your
This is not
fat
what
ass.
men look like.
What do they look like? What do they look like? Bald prisoners? Is that what they look like?
This is the problem in society.
Destiny, for example, will never convince Fresh and Fit to stop being degenerates because Destiny is himself a degenerate. And so just as I think Destiny plays an important role in stopping people on the left,
So let's some of the comments. I'm not sure. I thought I hit record. I don't know if I did. So excuse me if I'm repeating, but everyone reads the text in the framework of the current society and their own worldview. They failed to take in context what society was like when the texts were written. Could the same be said for clergy who were the only ones who could read and write the past? Okay, that's a Protestant. Fence sitters are the worst. I'd rather deal with atheists. That conversation revealed to me how these people are drowning in the delusion that they espouse traditional Christian values. Uh, they don't, and how willingly they do to get people on their side of social issues. I find enlightened centrism just being a coward. I feel like got us in this mess in the first place. Western morality, West has no morals. There's no possibility of anyone ever making sensible doctrine supported by scripture. That's why there are denominations and myriad interpretations. So anyways, guys, my thoughts on this are, I think that that's a fair point by P.F. Jung. But as I said earlier in the video, I do think that there is a belief, and it is certainly possible for Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy to coexist. And furthermore, because the underlying of it is the idea or the adherence to a patriarchal system and advocation of it. So, and not only that, but we have seen in the past that it can be done, that this patriarchal system can be put into practice even within a system that we have here in America, which is a freedom of religion country and framework. So, because ultimately, really, what it comes down to is pushing the consciousness. That is what you hear a lot of modern Christian nationalists saying, which is to push the consciousness, to get people. Because if you can get the everyday person to wrap their minds around the idea that a patriarchal framework is better, then the society will follow suit, regardless per se of the particular entity that is in charge. Now, is it far more logically consistent if you have an Orthodox Christian society, and then, because you have an Orthodox Christian society, you have a patriarchal system, and then the people that inhabit that country are patriarchal? Sure. But like I said, I think it's a fair critique. I couldn't find Andrew's full-blown response. If I do come across it, I will share it. And see kind of what we have there. But at the end of the day, I'm not really sure what argument P.F. Jung gave as to why cultural Christianity is better than a Christian nationalist framework, because a cultural Christian, from the video clip that he used, is exactly what Lauren Chen said, which is a separation between church and state. And fundamentally, and I think Andrew would probably agree with this, that if we do want a patriarchal system, that probably needs to disintegrate. It really is not. And that's kind of why we're in the place that we're in, is because of that secular notion of separation between church and state. So if we can move that out, then it would be possible. But I do think that a lot of conservatives like Lauren Chen or libertarians like P.F. Jung obviously would not advocate for the removal of that, whereas somebody like myself would be open to that. So very interesting. You know, as I always say, guys, I don't have all the answers. As I said at the beginning of the video, I come into this with an open mind and willing to hear people's ideas and thoughts out. I very much am still, there are things that I am working through and consistently refining, as should we all. All of us should be operating from a place of humility, to gain more knowledge and thus more data and thus more understanding and continuously refine our worldview. All right, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Can't wait to read what you guys have to say. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy wheel on facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you, kings. See you guys next time. Christ is king. Peace.